how that 30 million jobs will be created. But I think I'll let you pass because you really shine some lights on this topic. Mr. Garaji, of course, Europe faces a very different picture that we are talking about here.
Yes, we cannot create 30 million jobs in Europe. That's another certainty. See, I raise my hand and I'm proving it.
Exactly, I love it.
There are certainty, there are uncertainty. But we, of course, our target growth in Europe is in the range of 1.5%. This is it would be a good scenario. And the big difference with China, needless to say, is that China can grow almost without doing anything, just from the supply of rural to urban migrants. Used to be 18 million, 15, 16 million, and that's about 1.something% of the population. And with an income ratio of 3 times, urban income divided by rural income, moving 1.5% of population from making $1 to $3, that's already almost, with all the indirect effect, 1.5 to 2% of GDP growth. So if nothing happened in China, that 2% GDP growth would just naturally come from people moving homes. Then you have the investment, which fills the gap. Then you have a little bit of increasing consumption of the urban population that is already existing there. And you arrive, I make it simple, 2 plus 2 plus 2, 6%, almost sustainable growth. And I'll tell you more. In Europe, we always discuss, is China growth sustainable? Is this a certainty or uncertainty?
Every year.
And in my view, is a total certainty. I used to be a financial analyst, a sell side, so we have to forecast company earnings. And companies sometimes miss, sometimes meet earnings. In the case of China, they never miss. Always hit and even surpass the target on GDP growth.
That's
growth
too
creation.
easy for an analyst like you, huh? It makes your job so easy.
I mean, doing, do you know what? It makes the macroeconomist job in China is so easy that at some point it becomes useless because it's always going to be whatever the government proposes because the levers are all there and the dynamics are there. And the two certainty I was mentioning before, I want to refer to.
I want to come back to Europe after this.
Okay. We say demography and geography. These are the two certainties. One can be adapted a little bit, demography, with the policy on birth and not. Geography is what it is. And those two certainty will further reduce all the uncertainty. And Brexit. Why is Brexit tough? Because of the geography. You cannot have a border in an island that is called Ireland that is going to be either one or belonging to two common markets. And having a border between Northern Ireland and Ireland and not being able to move it, this is the core problem with Brexit, which I do forecast may not happen. Because of the geography really dominating these. And on the other hand, we also know that we cannot exceed 1.5, even 2% growth because the demography in Europe and in Italy, we have a fertility rate very, very low, something that China will experience in 20 years' time with a 4.2 times dependency ratio. So we do cooperate because China is looking at Italy on what China would look like in 20 years' time. We have a big problem of demography, and at this rate of 1.1 birth rate in China, even with the relaxing of policy, China will experience a serious demographic problem in 2045, 2050, just like we have now.
So many issues are entangled together. That's why it's complicated. Just as like, I know I wouldn't let you go just like that. Go ahead, sir.
I think one of the key elements, going back to what you said about demography, I think in Europe, like
and also
Japan,
about Europe too.
Yes,
please.
In Europe, we will run out of people before we run out of jobs, and the same is true in Japan. I think we need the technology to really make sure that the aging population is still productive. And that's why I think all this worry about technology is overdone, especially in those places where the demographics are as they are in Europe and Japan and some other markets are as difficult as they are today. So the key message here is we run out of people before we run out of jobs.
Right.
And then we need the technology to make it work.
Okay. Mr. Suzuki, I cannot let you not speak on this very important topic. It seems that all the other gentlemen are following the direction of your discussion a little bit. So your comments now? Microphone, please. Microphone, please.
Some analysis says that in Japan, in the next 10 years, that probably 2 million routine jobs will be replaced by technology, and but newly 1.2 million or 1.3 million non-routine workers needed. But there will be a big mismatch in people. So routine worker cannot do non-routine business. So that only education can solve those problems. So that we have to pay attention to educational changes.
Okay, we touch on a lot of areas. The reason why we touch on them is because we do have smarter audience sitting there. They want to go more in depth probably about some of the points you just mentioned, gentlemen. So let's open our floor right now. Oh, this gentleman is really active. Okay, we have about, let's just make it 10 minutes for the audience to ask questions, and then we collect the questions, okay, so that they save time. We collect the questions, and then we'll have relevant panelists to answer them. How about that? Okay? It's a democracy on the stage. Is it okay? 好，来，咱们这么做啊。So when you stand up, very briefly, tell us who you are and your question, not a 5-minute speech, please. Okay. The gentleman over there.
My name is Shen Wang. I'm a lawyer. So my question is a twofold question. If you believe the certainties are larger than uncertainties, so what kind of measures would you like to take in the event of Black Swan event? And if you believe uncertainties is larger than the certainties, what measures you would like to take to manage uncertainties? Thank you.
You are a philosopher by nature. Thank you. Okay, next question. This lady, please. This lady, please. 这边的这位女士可以吗？谢谢。
Thank you. I'm with the 21st Century Business Herald, and my question goes to Mr. Garaci. So, in addition to boosting bilateral trade, what else opportunities have you seen in the Belt and Road Initiative, and how will Italian government integrate its own development strategy with the Belt and Road Initiatives? And could you elaborate on what kind of projects the Italian government is preparing in infrastructure areas like roads or ports? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garaci, did you realize you just become the spokesperson of the whole Italian government here in Boao Forum? He is. Okay, thank you. Let's go to the gentleman over here. 来，这边中间这一位，我那边还没有照顾到，如果那边还有人举手，你告诉我。
Okay, I'm from CNPC, China National Petroleum Corporation. I have a question to Mr. Suzuki. According to what you mentioned, in the next 10 years, there will be a sort of replacement AI for human beings, 2 or 3 minutes. What's your consideration? That will happen first in manufacturing aspects or in consumption aspects.
Thank you. Where is it likely to happen? Later. More questions? Is there any? The lady over there in green, please. Yes, 那边.
Thank you. I'm with Global Times. I have a question to the gentlemen who believe uncertainties outweigh certainties. So, since we are actually in front of so many uncertainties of the world economy, what can Asia and all those emerging countries in Asia region do? And should they better, join effort together, or what kind of action they should take?
Okay, a policy question. We need probably a month to discuss it out, but I'm sure you're going to have some for us later. More? Okay. The lady over there in the back, yes, please.
I also have a question for Mr. Garaci.
Who are you?
Sorry, I'm a reporter from Hong Kong Phoenix TV. And since Italy just became the first G7 nation to sign up for the Belt and Road Initiative, do you think Italy has set a very good role model to the other countries in Europe to forge a better future with China, or to create a future shared with China? Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Maybe 2 final questions before we go to the answer. Over here. The gentleman, yes.
Thank you. My name is Fang. I represent China Finance Line. We first talk about uncertainty in economic, then we go talking about uncertainty in technology advance, which leads to job loss. So right now my question is, how do we deal with advanced technology that being holding in just a few people? It's happening right now in American, some companies, especially Facebook, like Google, something like that. So I think, what should we do with them, with the great advantage that they're holding in the company?
You mean the monopoly of technologies, or?
Yes, pretty much.
Well, if you say so, okay. And any other questions? Okay, the gentleman over there. Yes, please, next.
Hello, Jan Klaviter, I'm with Anglo American, and I'm very surprised that climate change hasn't been mentioned at all in this. Is that in the certain camp or in the uncertain camp?
What do you think?
Well, I'm not on the panel.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think those are the questions we could collect for now. I'm sure you have a lot of different issues that you have in mind. Okay, let's put them into category, okay? So one is about Italy, Europe, your choices vis-a-vis China and the new vision. That's one direction. The other direction is about the technology, whether there's monopoly of technology, efficiency of application of technology, and also there's one question, a philosopher question about certainty, uncertainty, what are you going to do? And narrow down the philosophy question, which is about what Asia can do together. I think we cover everything, right?
No,
yes.
Climate change.
See? Yes, climate change. Thank you, sir. So, and climate change or other factors that we haven't touched on, but really is likely to have a big impact on all of us. So let's clear up the Italy related issue first. So very briefly, Mr. Galacci, I know you already answered part of it. So please go ahead in addition.
Okay, very briefly, the answer to the lady here on what we are a government that initiate this strengthen the relationship with China, and then it will be up to private companies to decide exactly the specific project that they would like to entertain with Chinese counterparts. As indication that we in the government give is what China does well and what Italy needs. That's the first starting point to try to meet demand and supply. And the areas will be infrastructure, ports, transport. So we're looking at, and we've signed some agreements in the northern Italy, in Trieste and Genova, two of the ports in the North Adriatic, because these are the natural terminal for the Silk Road into Northern Europe, because those are the two ports in the Mediterranean that are further north. And so this gives easier access to Central Europe, because we know route by sea is about 10 times cheaper than route by train. And we do know that the Duisburg-Chongqing train is there, but it doesn't really make sustainable profits. And so China is looking for extending the water route as far north as possible. So this is a natural aspect because Italy sits there. Then let's not forget Italy, although I say we want to be leader for the first time, really Italy has been at the center of the Silk Road for centuries, and I don't want to talk about Marco Polo in the 1200 during the Yuan dynasty, but also during the Jesuit time, 1600, that's when really the Silk Road really caught up, and Italian has always been trading with China. And I'll tell you another thing, in 1970, in the middle of global uncertainty then, yes, Italy was one of the first countries to entertain diplomatic relationship with China.
Okay.
Even then, attracting criticism from the allied US. Again, after that, every country in the world, of course, joined and recognized China.
Okay.
That's my, I think I missed maybe the lady at the back question from Phoenix TV.
It's similar. I think it's a similar question.
Okay.
It's a similar question. I know for an Italian gentleman, what you said is only half of what you know, or a little of what you know. Quoting Marco Polo.
But one thing I want to stress, and then I stop, is like, this is really a project to strengthen friendship between two peaceful countries.
Thank you, sir.
These are the basis on which we build commercial, cultural exchanges. We want to make movies filmed in Italy, Italian movies filmed in China, because knowledge lowers uncertainty, the risk, the famous R in the denominator of the cash flows, and that creates incentive for investment and for growth.
It's only fair that I let Mr. Zhang to also comment about this a little bit. Go ahead, sir.
No, I will pick up the questions on the policy reactions, what to do.
What to do? Just a little bit later on the China-Italy issue. I let Mr. Zhang from China side to also comment just a little bit from your perspective.
I saw that Mr. Zhang as well.
Yeah. Yes, I know. 张雨燕老师，请您也回应一下刚才大家提出的有关中国和意大利合作的这相关的一些相关的话题，简单回应一下。
我觉得这次习近平主席呢，访问意大利，特别是签署了中国跟意大利的这个“一带一路”的合作协议，我觉得这个是非常重要的啊。这个“一带一路”呢，它的这个倡议啊，它是一个非常包容性的。那么5年以来呢，我觉得它这个取得了很多的这个成就。同时呢，也需要不断的继续往前推进。刚才我们涉及到的很多不确定和确定性的问题，我觉得这个都和这个中国和意大利和发达国家之间的合作有密切的关系。那么这个协议的签订本身，我觉得它意味着一个什么呢？意味着双方呢有一个方向性的特别是在未来的一些配套的一些政策，法律法规都会跟进。我觉得这个会为进一步的发展能够铺平道路。
One of the things is very certain, 确定性. That is, we are all on the learning curve. We need to come up with new ideas and do it gradually, implement them beautifully, so that this learning curve will be well earned. That's not just about Belt and Road, it's also about many other issues that all of you have just touched on. Mr. Zhang, now is Mr. Zhang, Tao Zhang from IMF.
Yeah.
Policy.
I would like to address these questions on what to do and what about the climate change. First of all, on the what to do, particularly for Asia and the emerging markets, 2 concrete suggestions. One is to fight with uncertainties. Asia, particularly this part of Asia, we need to try everything to support innovation. Because innovation is there already. Innovation can provide a variety of the new technologies which provide the opportunities for higher efficiencies, productivities. In the past 2 decades, the ICT, the new technologies, already accounted for almost 30% of the per capita income growth. So there's no other better way to, other than supporting the innovations. We have to do it. Second, for Asia, you have to continue the effort to make greater integrations among the Asian economies. This is a better way. This has already proved the better way. We already estimate that, come back to the numbers. If we get rid of this tariff and non-tariff barriers between Asian countries, in the next 10 years or so, the Asian economy will gain by anywhere between 10 to 15% of the Asian GDPs, which basically means the size of the GDP of India plus Korea combined. So it's a huge benefit. Okay, let me briefly touch upon the climate change. Climate change obviously needs much greater global effort to take care of the climate change issues. One of the issues is we have to strengthen the efforts on the carbon taxation at the global levels. And so this is for all the people concerned around the world. But I want to say, because this is Boao, in Hainan is island. So we know there are a greater number of the island economy around the world, Caribbean, Pacific, etc. For these economies, for many of these economies, these are the climate change things, it is a reality to them. Right. So we have to strengthen the effort, particularly by themselves. One of the things that the IMF, together with the World Bank, we try to do is try to switch the strategies from the ex-post resilience buildings to the ex-ante resilience buildings, which basically this is the macro integrations of these policies involving fiscal, structural tools, and plus these contingencies, fighting instruments, etc. If you have interest, we have this entire website on that, and including building up some sort of the climate change fund on that. So
thank you, sir. Yeah. And we know that the Boao Forum for Asia this year also tackled many of those issues that we touched on, including climate change as well. And we'll leave it to some specific sessions to discuss it in details. Briefly from you.
Yeah, let me just expand on what Mr. Zhang said. I think the key to really ensure, dealing with uncertainties and also black swans is cooperation. And we have seen in the 2008-2009 financial recession that it only stayed a recession and not became the Great Depression because, companies and countries around the world were working together, and China played a very important role with its enormous investment program, as did, the Europeans, North America, and the rest of the world. And I think also when it comes to climate change, when it comes to black swans, maybe pandemics, I think the solution is not that we can foresee them, but the solution is working together and solving them together.
Right.
And I think that will be the key. So cooperation will be the key solution for all these uncertainties that we have to deal with.
Okay, Mr. Wang, very briefly.
I started by being on the certainty group, but I have an uncertain point, and that is the climate change, actually, which I want to touch on earlier. And we know that climate change will come upon us, and Singapore is an island economy, small state. We have seen sea level rising, temperature getting warmer, and we have to be prepared for that. And in order to do that, I think countries need to work together on this. And you need multilateral efforts. You need multilateral systems in order to anchor all that.
That has been emphasized once and again, it seems, on the stage. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Zhang, very briefly, 简单也想说。
Okay. 我回应一下，就是说怎么来应对不确定性。中国有一句话叫做以不变应万变。那么什么是不变？我想不变呢，在这里有几个层面的。
简单讲一下。
最重要的什么呢？就是国际合作，这个要加强。我们一直在做的，因为今天的挑战是很多不确定性来自于什么呢？国家间的合作的这个不通畅。另外呢，对企业来讲呢，还是做好自己的刚才讲到的创新；对个人呢，还是要学习，学习。地区的刚才说的亚洲发展中国家，我觉得其实有些东西我们可以不断的努力，比如说这个 RCEP 的谈判，对吧？建立区域贸易组织，我觉得这个是非常重要的。谢谢。
Building platforms, mechanisms that we can work together. Okay, and Professor Calder, please. And then we go to Mr. Suzuki.
Yes, thank you. I agree very much on this theme of global cooperation. Certainly, the one thing I would go back to is one of those certainties that we discussed near the beginning, namely health care. This is an area, it's a win-win situation, working together to improve global health care for all the world.
Okay, Mr. Suzuki.
Communication.
Communication?
Yeah, regarding communication, I think that global communication is quite important. And in Japan, from the second quarter of last year, gradually exports start to decreasing. And it is quite important to increase trade. But right now that uncertainty is located in trade friction. But within the government and the corporate sector, that if we have more global communication, probably we can, to some extent, solve those problems.
Cooperation, communication, we got a lot of key words from these very smart gentlemen on the stage. Before we go, I wonder whether there's another certainty that we could also embrace, that is history. We all have shared history. of human being. There are lessons and experiences that we can all learn, even at this stage of our development. If we grasp that, that will be a huge resource for all of us to handle the uncertainties right now. Without elaborating the 1,000 years of history, let me go to you for final words. Everyone, one sentence, we wrap it up. Now, let's go the other way around, okay? So Mr. Zhang Yuyan, you go first. One sentence and one sentence alone, please.
处理确定性和不确定性，用这句话吧，在现实中发现问题，到历史中寻找答案。
Love it, thank you. 我们应该鼓鼓掌。Mr. Zhang, no pressure.
I said it already. Let's do right things. Do no harms. Don't inflict the self-wounded wound.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Wong.
I think it's incumbent on all leaders in the world, whether it's business leaders or political leaders, to bear in mind that they are just the custodian and the stewards of today's present, and they have to care for their future generation.
Leadership. Thank you.
So I think I agree that we need global communication and the proper usage of technologies.
Thank you, Mr. Suzuki. Mr. Garlacci.
I would say do not forget ethics and moral. How do you say moral? Yes, morality and everything else. That is the tissue of all societies. We've been talking about money, climate, but interpersonal relationship in a good way would keep us going even if GDP was less than 6.7.
Thank you. And Professor Calder.
A phrase, not a sentence, improving global health.
All right, there we go.
I would
Last
say
but not least.
The future is bright, but we need to make it happen, and we need to work together to make it happen because we are all in one boat, which is called the Earth.
So, I promise you we have a vote at the end of our discussion. If we could do just 3 out of those 7 things that you prescribed, are we going to have more certainties or uncertainties? The uncertainty camp, please raise your hand. If we do just the 3 out of the 7 things that you just mentioned, are we going to have more certainties or uncertainties for the future? Who says uncertainty? Raise your hand. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so why don't I just say this once again? Let's do a vote now. With the advice you give and you listen to, can we have more certainties for our future? Can we have a vote now?
If the advice is taken.
Yes. Well, okay, there we go. And I should ask the audience if you think more certainty or uncertainty to come. Certainty with all the advice, please raise your hand. I would raise my hand. All right, we still have some skeptical minds in the audience, but we're going to convince you with our actions. Thank you so much. For now, let's put our hands together to thank all our panelists. Thank you. Thank you. And let's put our hands together for our audience.
Right.
Thank you. On behalf of Boao Forum and CGTN, thank you so much for being with us.
请大家拿好自己的随身物品，直接出场。我们在这儿。